Good morning, Year 10. I hope you had a lovely weekend and you managed to do your maths watch yesterday. So maths is on the timetable again for today. So hopefully you've already had a go at your 20 questions and you are now watching in order to mark them, okay? Don't forget to upload your marked and corrected sheets to Show My Homework when you're done. Okay, so first up we've got an inequality. So it's just like an equation. So we just want to get all of our x's on one side and all of our numbers on the other side. We're just going to make sure we leave this symbol the same. Now, hopefully you remember that these symbols mean that something is greater than or less than, okay? So if the number is this side on the open end, it's bigger, and obviously if it's pointing to the smaller end, it is smaller than, okay? So we'll solve it and then we'll move on from there. So I've got 9x plus 3 is bigger than 21. So I want to get rid of that plus 3. So I'm going to take away 3 from both sides. Hold on. Take away 3 from both sides. So that leaves me with 9x. And then it leaves me with 18. Okay. Now at the moment I've got 9 x's, but I only want 1. So I can divide by 9. And that would leave me with x. Still going to leave the symbol exactly the same. And then I'm going to divide by 9 on this side again. So how many 9s fit into 18? Well, that's 2. So now I know I've solved my inequality. I've found out that x is greater than 2. So x can be any number that's greater than 2. So it can be 3, 4, 5, 6, anything above that. Okay? So it's just like an equation. Okay, so the next one, 13x minus 5 is greater than minus 11.5. So I'm going to get rid of my minus 5 by adding 5 to both sides. Sorry, it's another line. There we go. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. So that leaves me with 13x on this side. Remember, leaving the symbol exactly the same, okay? So if I'm on minus 11.5 and I add 5, I'm going to get closer to 0, okay? So that will leave me with minus 6.5, okay? Now I've got 13 x's, but I don't want 13 x's. I only want 1. So I can divide by 13 to give my x on this side, and then divide by 13 on this side, which gives me minus 0.5, okay? Because I've just divided by 13 there as well. So now I know that x is greater than minus 0.5, okay? So it's anything above minus 0.5. So yeah, it's just like an equation, you just leave the symbol the same. Okay, next one then. So it asks us to work out 0.4 times 0.3. So I'm going to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to times both sides by 10 like we have before. So that gives me, if I move my decimal point forward one time, I now have 4 times 3, which equals 12. That's perfect. But because I times it by 10, so I move forwards a decimal point 2 times, I'm going to have to move it back 2 times on my answer. So that leaves me with 0.12 as my answer. Okay, the next one is a subtraction, but it's just got decimals in it, so we just need to make sure we write it nice and carefully. So we've got 7.32 minus 6.90. So 0 from 2 is 2. 9 from 3 I can't do, so I'm going to make that into a 6 and that into a 13. 9 from 13 is now 4. Leave my point in there. 6 from 6 is 0. So that's my answer, 0.42. Perfect. So up next, it wants us to express 3/5 as a percentage. Now, some of you will just be able to work this out. I do it various different ways. The way we always tend to do it in class is we take the denominator. We know that percentages are out of 100, so we're going to have to make that 5 into 100. So what would we need to times 5 by to get to 100? Well, we'd need to times it by 20, because 20 times 5 is 100. That means 100 is our denominator. And then I can do the same to the top. So 3 times 20 is 60. So now my equivalent fraction is 60 over 100. I can just take that top amount because it's a percentage, and that's my answer because it's 60%. Okay. Up next then, so we've got to express 75% as a fraction in its lowest form. So as we know, a percentage is always out of 100. So we can write 75 out of, that's all a fraction is, 100. Okay. But now we want it in its lowest form. So what's the highest number that goes into both? Well, 25 goes into both. So if I divide 75 by 25, I'm going to get 3. And then if I do the same to the bottom, I'm going to get 4. So 3/4 is our final answer there. Up next then, we have to factorize, okay? So factorize means we've got to put the brackets in. We did a few of these before. So we've got 8x plus 20. So we want the highest common factor between these two, okay? We want the highest number that goes into both 8 and 20. And that's going to go on the outside of the bracket, okay? So the highest number that goes into both of those is going to be the number 4. So I'm going to put that outside the bracket, and then I've just got to make the rest of the bracket work. So remember, when there's just a number on the outside of a bracket, you're going to multiply. So this now says 4, and then you've got to multiply everything in the bracket by 4. So to get 8x, well, how do I get 8? So 4 times 2 is 8, and then I've got my x because I wanted 8x. And then to get 20, I would have to do 4 times 5, okay? So that means that my answer would be 4, open brackets, 2x plus 5, close brackets. And then we can test that by just getting rid of the brackets again. So if I did 4 times 2x, I would have 8x, and if I did 4 times 5, I would have 20. So I know that I am correct on that one. Okay, so the next one is also factorising, a little bit more difficult because there is obviously a squared in there. But again, I've got 20x squared minus 8x, and I need to find the highest common factor between those two, so the highest number that goes into 20 and 8. Well, I already know from the last one that the highest number that goes into both of those is 4. But this time they also have something else in common. They both have an x, okay? So I can write my x on the outside of the bracket too. Now, to get from 4x to 20x squared by multiplying, I'm just going to do it in bits, okay? So to get from 4 to 20, I would have to times by 5. And then to get from x to x squared, I would have to times x by x. Yeah, because when you times something by itself, that's the square. Okay, so now I know that 4 times 5 is 20, and x times x is x squared. So now, how do I get from 4x to minus 8x? Well, I would have to times 4 by minus 2, just by minus 2, because I've already got the x, okay? So that's what would be inside, and once again we can check it, because 4x times 5x, as we said, is 20x squared, and 4x times minus 2 would be minus 8x. Perfect. Okay, so up next we want to make x the subject of the formula. So this is really similar just to doing equations. Like normally we'd want to get all the letters on one side and all the numbers on the other side, but here we just want to make sure that we get x on one side and everything else on the other side, okay? So if I've got y equals x plus a and I only want x, all I've got to do is take away the a, okay? But remember, I've got to do that to both sides. So that leaves me with y minus a equals x, okay? And then I can just write that nice and neatly because I want x to be first. So I would say x equals y minus a. Okay, and once again, we've got y equals a x. Now, when two letters are next to each other, or when a letter is next to a number, we know that it means multiply. So this says y equals a times x. But I want to get rid of that a, don't I? Because if we remember, I want my x on one side and everything else on the other side. So if I want to get rid of the a, I'm going to divide by a. Okay, but if you remember, I've got to do that at both sides. So that leaves me with y over a equals x. Or I could rewrite that as x equals y divided by a, okay, with it as a fraction. Okay, so next up, it wants us to express 24 as a product of its primes. So if you remember, we have to write the number at the top, and then we have to do two numbers that when we times them together, they equal the previous number, but one has to be a prime. So if it's even, we always start with 2. So 2 times 12 is 24. 12 is still even, so we can do 2 times 6. 6 is still even, so we can do 2 times 3. And we have to circle both of those because they're both prime numbers. And then we can write it out nice and neatly. So we've got 1, 2, 3 2's. So we do 2 to the power of 3 times, and then we've only got 1 3. So we pop our 3 there. Okay? So make sure you join me for video number 2, and we will do the last 9 questions on there.